So you want to date insanely beautiful women here in Colombia, but you've heard the rumors, you've heard the news reports. The Colombianas are going to treat you like a walking cash machine. You could get drugged, you could get robbed, you could even end up dead. But what if I told you that almost everything you've heard about Colombia and its women is a lie? And in this video, I'm going to break down for you the unspoken truth about what Colombian women actually looking for in a guy, the real reason Colombian women love dating expats and foreigners, and by the way, it's not what you're thinking, and how you can meet incredible, stunning women in Colombia and build real, meaningful relationships here. After watching this video, I guarantee that you'll think differently about love and dating here in Colombia. Hi, my name's DJ and I've lived in Colombia for over 10 years. And in that time, I've been on dates with literally hundreds of gorgeous, fantastic Colombian women and some not so fantastic ones. And now I'm happily married. We have 3 beautiful children. And this is the video that I wish I would have had when I first came to Colombia in 2015. Okay, so let's dive in. And firstly, let me dispel some common myths right at the outset. Colombian women are not gold diggers and they're not scam artists. Yeah, criminals and people with bad intentions do exist here like they do everywhere in the world. And Colombia is a fairly corrupt country, but you really don't need to be afraid of dating in Colombia. Colombians are friendly, approachable, and it's pretty easy to avoid the bad people if you know what to look for. I'll explain more about that later in the video, but first I want you to understand that the problem is many foreign guys come here with pretty bad intentions themselves. Many are looking to use the local women for sex. So naturally, those dodgy guys attract the dodgy girls. They get themselves in trouble. Everyone hears about it. And then the good Colombian women get painted with the same brush. But after living here for over a decade, I can tell you that the vast majority of Colombian women are just not like that. They don't jump into bed with anyone. They don't just care about money. What they do care about very strongly is family, stability, commitment, loyalty, purpose. Most Colombian women are looking for a well put together guy, someone who has values, who can give them a sense of stability and security, someone with a purpose in life, who's loyal, has goals, ambition, and has the temperance and fortitude to see those goals through to the end. When I went on the first date with my wife, we sat there in this beautiful Spanish restaurant. I asked my wife, what she imagined doing in the future. Did she imagine like settling down, getting married? And she said she honestly couldn't see that happening because she said most people don't believe in that anymore and most guys just want to have fun. And then she asked me, and I said, well, actually, I do want to get married. I believe strongly in family and marriage, and that is really important to me. I said I wanted to raise a family, grow old together, and, have a stable, loving home. Man, I'm telling you, my wife's eyes lit up when I said that. She says now that that was the moment she knew that I was the guy for her. And I didn't even do anything particularly impressive. I didn't shower her with expensive gifts or act like I had a ton of money in the bank. In fact, I just showed her that I stood for something and that I wanted to build something stable and long-lasting. I showed her I had a purpose, gave her a vision of what the future with me would look like. Colombian women, if you do that, they love it. If you can show a Colombian woman that you're a man with a mission, that you're going places and that you want to build something stable and invite her along for the ride, then you will have no trouble finding incredible, loyal, beautiful women all over the place who want to date you here in Colombia. As a side note, let me also say that in my experience, Colombian women also love it if you dress well, if you have a sense of humor, if you take care of yourself. I mean, let's face it, Colombian women put a lot of time and effort and attention in taking care of themselves and making themselves look beautiful and presentable. And first impressions do count, honestly. So it's respectful to, turn up on your first date, make sure your hair and nails are freshly trimmed, your beard's trimmed, you've got clean clothes, clean shoes. Make sure you smell good too. So many Colombian women have told me that they love a man who smells good. So that's an easy one to do. Okay, so now we know a bit more about what Colombian women are attracted to, but why do they feel like they can find these things in expats and foreign men? It's kind of um, become a bit of a joke, a kind of a stereotype now that Colombians love dating expats and foreign men. And contrary to popular belief, it's not actually because of the money. And yet, the majority of the guys who come here to Colombia, they have, because of the exchange rate, they generally have a lot more financial power than the local Colombian guys. But that isn't the only or even the most important reason why Colombian girls like dating expats and foreigners. So, to understand the real reason that they love dating guys like us, we need to kind of understand a little bit about the history of Colombia. So, Colombia takes its name from Christopher Columbus, who made his legendary voyage to the Americas in 1493. That was just 1 year after the fall of the last Muslim stronghold in Spain. And that marked the end of Spain's Reconquista, which was like a military campaign to expel the Muslims from Spain. So the Spaniards fought the Muslims for years and years, and they developed this hyper-masculine warrior culture. It was a culture that kind of rewarded and gave status to bravery and risk-taking. So when Spain began to explore and colonize the New World, a class of noblemen called the Hidalgos, who were like a kind of lower class of noblemen. So these weren't like the top guys. These were guys who had education, they had military experience from the Reconquista campaigns, but they had relatively limited economic resources. And they were drawn to the Americas because they were looking for fortune. They were looking for land and gold. And also, they were really Catholic and they wanted to spread Catholicism. So they came over here, and from its inception, Colombia and the New World was kind of wild, dangerous, and pretty lawless. It's a new frontier. It's kind of like akin to like the North American Wild West. And it didn't have, at that time, it didn't have the sophisticated cultural institutions and high expectations that keep a society on the straight and narrow, like you can see in like England or France. So that led to a culture here in Colombia, which kind of persists today, where the men have a reputation for kind of infidelity, for kind of being like womanizers, for taking concubines, and also like they have a reputation for being possessive, controlling, and even quite violent, actually. Um, in France and England, for example, noblemen were held to really high standards of respect and virtue through the traditions, like the courtly traditions. There was knightly ideals and orders of chivalry. So like the knightly orders, they would have to take vows of chastity and virtue. And this tradition of chivalry, respect, virtue, in those kind of countries like France and England particularly, has filtered down through the generations and permeated the culture of those countries, and also of like sister countries that grew out of like England, places like USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So what does this have to do with expats in Colombia, you might ask? Well, it's not a coincidence that the majority of guys coming here and dating Colombian women are from those countries that I just mentioned. They're mainly from North America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe, like England, France, Germany. Germans love coming here. I've met quite a lot of Germans here. And so, yeah, they're bringing with them, more financial power and stability, like I said. But it's not just that attracts the Colombian women. It's our culture and it's our values. I've been on dates with so many Colombian women, and they all tell me time and time again that the reason that they like going out with foreign guys is because they're just a lot more affectionate and respectful in the way that they treat the women. Colombian men have a bad reputation. They just do. And I'm not trying to disrespect Colombian guys. Like, I got a lot of great Colombian friends. My best friend is a Colombian, actually. He was the best man at my wedding, really stand-up guy. But in general, Colombian men have a horrible habit of treating women like objects, of being controlling and possessive. And for all the people that talk about expat men attracting Colombian girls with their money, the reality is that they're more attracted to our culture and our values than anything else. And also, it's a kind of a status thing. I mean, the fact is that Western Europe, North America, these are countries that are really high status in just the global geopolitical order. It's just higher status, more developed, more advanced, more sophisticated. So naturally, Colombian girls who want to move up in the world, they want to live in a nice neighborhood, they want to send their kids to nice schools. So they're attracted to this more advanced cultures. And that's not because they're gold diggers. It's really offensive, actually, to call a woman a gold digger just because she wants to like move up in the world and have a nice life. So yeah, so if you're an expat, a digital nomad, maybe you're a little bit older, maybe you're looking to retire in Colombia. Now we're going to talk about where and how you can meet like high quality Colombian women and how you can avoid the scams and the criminals. So the first thing that I would say, which really helped me when I came here, is learn the language. Now, I was lucky. When I came here 10 years ago, I already had a fairly decent grasp of Spanish because I actually studied Spanish at school, and I did like an exchange when I was at school where I went and stayed with a Spanish family for a few weeks. So I already had a fairly decent grasp of Spanish, and that just helps so much. It doesn't just help like being able to communicate and make friends and connect with people, but it also helps to recognize when you're being scammed or, if you're even in a dangerous situation. So I would say that like highly recommend doing your best to learn the language. I'd also say what really worked well for me when I came here is get out of the tourist traps, get into the real Colombian communities. You're not just going to be safer in the real places, but you're going to meet like a lot better women because they're not going to be the types of women that go to the tourist traps looking for expats who they can exploit and scam. The fact is, the criminals tend to drift towards the areas where they know all the expats and the tourists are going to be. So if you get out and you go to towns that aren't as touristy, then you're actually going to have like a much more authentic experience here in Colombia, but you're also going to probably avoid a lot of the problems that a lot of guys have when they come here. When I first came here, I lived in a tiny little village that literally, I don't think anyone in this village had ever seen a foreign guy before. This was a real kind of backwater, out the way place that no one would ever visit. No one would have any reason to visit this place. And I spent a couple years there, got to understand like Colombian culture in a real unique way. Do talk to women on the street. They're super friendly and super approachable. And the great thing about like approaching a woman in Colombia and just saying, "Hey, you're really cute. Can I get your number?" is they don't get offended by that and they don't get weeded out. They appreciate it. They will also appreciate it if you're direct and, you just say like, "I find you attractive. Can I get your number?" If you try and like dance around it, then they don't respect that. Like Colombian women like you to be direct and honest about what you're looking for. So don't be afraid to approach women in the street. But I would say a little bit of caution if you approach them like literally on the street, because there is kind of a tendency in Colombia for people to rob people on the street. So they may be a little bit more wary if like some random guy is just coming up to them on the street, because Colombians are very aware of street crime and being robbed. So you're probably going to get a lot better response if you talk to her in a coffee shop. You could just say, "Hey, can I buy you a coffee?" Or if you're in a shopping mall, like generally she's going to be a lot more relaxed in a shopping mall because it's a pretty safe place. They're full of security guards. But yeah, don't be afraid of approaching Colombian women on the street. They will appreciate it. They don't find it a turn off at all. I would also say when you first come here, don't just try and find a girl to date. Actually, try and make friends. That's the best way, in fact, to meet women here in Colombia, is just to make friends, because most Colombians, the way they date and like meet people with a romantic interest is through their friendship groups and through their family. Like it's very, very common for Colombians to, go out a night for a night out of drinks with like a bunch of their family, their immediate family. Like they'll go out with like their cousins and their uncles and their aunts and their brothers and sisters. Very, very family orientated. Uh, so make friends, and that way you'll be introduced to people. And then once you are kind of introduced to people through common friends, then you'll have a lot more trust and you'll be able to meet people. Great way to make friends is whatever you're into, just go and find a group that does the things that you're into. If you want to learn to dance, you could take salsa classes. Maybe it's like a sporting club, maybe you want to join a tennis club, football club, volleyball, squash, whatever you want. There's hiking groups. There's all kinds of things that you can join. And they're really good in places like Medellin, Bogotá, like the big cities. There's tons of like networking events. I just went one the other night. It's really awesome. Met loads of cool people. So like business events, those are great places also to find awesome Colombian women. So yeah, don't be shy. And finally, let's talk a little bit about dating apps. Now, you're probably going to hear a lot of advice online saying avoid the dating apps like Tinder. They use it to scam you and they're going to drug you and rob you and kill you. Uh, that is true. That does happen. There are criminal gangs that target foreign guys, especially on through these apps, and they will send girls out on dates with you, and they'll put this drug in your drink called scopolamine, or it's also called dragon's breath. And then you'll wake up the next day and like all your stuff is gone and you're disorientated. And yeah, thankfully it's never happened to me, but it does happen to a lot of guys. So that can happen, but I would say you if you know what to look for, it's fairly easy to avoid that. So let's just quickly run down what to look for. Red flags. So if she's covered in tattoos and has really sexual images, like no images of like her family or anything or her friends, just like lots of very sexual images, and she's like covered in tattoos, red flag. Like, no way. Don't go there. Okay. Also, don't be shy of asking for her Instagram. Like that's fairly common here in Colombia to like ask someone for their Instagram, and you can go on the Instagram and you can check, her photos. That's not a bad thing to do. And again, if she doesn't have any photos of her family or friends or anything, then maybe a bit of caution. If she invites someone else to the date, especially if she does it without telling you, or if it's the first date and she says, "Oh, I'm gonna bring my cousin, I'm gonna bring my brother," yeah, don't go there. That's not a good sign. If she asks to come to your house, especially if it's on the first date or very early on in the relationship, then that's a bad sign. Okay, that is a bad sign. It's a sign that she doesn't have particularly strong morals, but it's also a sign that she may be looking to rob you, because a lot of these girls that do this robbing scam, they go to the guy's house, they drug him, and then they rob all the stuff in his house. Another red flag is if she asks you to send her money, like within like the first couple of dates, then just end the relationship. Because although it is the done thing here for the guy to, if you invite her on a date, you should expect to pay for everything. You should expect to pay for the meal and the drinks. That's totally normal. That's just being a gentleman. You're inviting a lady out on a date. You should pay. You should pay. But if you invite her on a date and then the next day she's like, "Amor, My abuela is in hospital. I need some money. That's a bad sign. That's a bad sign. Like, it's like a classic scam. Like someone she knows is in hospital, or she's crashed a car, or something terrible has happened. If that happens, just be like, you don't need to like accuse her of lying or anything, but just be like, sorry, I can't help you. If she asks for money and you say no, just say no in like just a normal, nice way, and then she gets angry or she stops talking to you, then you know that she's a scam artist. If because a normal, honest person asking for someone who they've just met for money, they're not going to get angry if you say no. In fact, most normal people just don't ask people they've just met for money. It's not really a cool thing to do. Yeah, so those are some red flags. That's how to meet Colombian women. That's what Colombian women are looking for and why they love dating expats. Now, if you want a more in-depth guide about how to date successfully here in Colombia, then there's a link below. Go to heycolombia.com and grab the free download. I'll see you there.